August 19, 1942, 0450 hours, the church shingle beach in front of the seafront casino at Dieppe, occupied France. A flat-bottomed landing craft drops its ramp into the surf. Smoke drifts across the pebbles. Bodies are already on the stones. A small tracked vehicle rumbles down the steel ramp, its driver hunched behind a thin steel plate. 3 crew, an open top, no turret, no gun heavier than a light machine gun. 4 tons of riveted plate that a rifle round can pierce at close range. It looks impossibly small for what it has been asked to do. The beach in front of it is the most heavily defended stretch of coastline in occupied Europe. Concrete strongpoints, anti-tank guns hidden in stone houses, machine gun nests on the headlands. The cliffs above are full of Germans who have been waiting 2 years for this attack. The carrier crosses 3 meters of shingle. The rounded flint pebbles wedge into its tracks. The drive sprocket binds. The vehicle stops dead, halfway up the beach, in the middle of the worst killing ground of the entire Second World War. It will never move again. It will never fire a shot. It will be photographed by the Germans and abandoned to history. And yet the lessons of that single bogged machine, multiplied across 113,000 vehicles built between 1934 and 1960, will help the Allies return to these beaches and win the war. Its designation was the Universal Carrier, and it was the most produced armoured fighting vehicle in human history. To understand why a 4-ton tracked tractor ended up on the bloodiest beach of the war, you need to understand what the British Army wanted from it, and what the British Army never wanted it to do. The carrier traced its origins to the 1920s. Major Gifford Lecaine Martel had built a one-man tankette in his own garage. Sir John Carden and Vivian Lloyd refined the concept at Vickers-Armstrongs through the Carden-Lloyd Mark VI. By 1934, the British Army had a small tracked vehicle that could carry a machine gun team across ground that wheeled trucks could not cross. In 1937, when the Bren Gun replaced the Lewis as the standard British light machine gun, the design became the Bren Gun Carrier. In 1940, Britain consolidated 4 near-identical carrier types into one standardised design, the Universal Carrier. The vehicle itself was a study in deliberate compromise, length 3.65 metres, width 2.1 metres, combat weight roughly 4 tons. The engine was a Ford V8 flathead, 3.9 litres, 85 horsepower, running on regular petrol, the same engine that powered a contemporary Ford pickup truck. Top speed 30 miles per hour on road, range about 150 miles. Armour was 7 to 10 millimeters of riveted or welded plate, designed to defeat rifle bullets at close range, nothing more. Suspension was the Horseman coil spring system, refined by John Carden and Sidney Horseman. Steering was a vertical wheel that warped the front bogie sideways for gentle turns and engaged track brakes for tighter ones. This meant a regular infantryman could be trained as a driver in days, rather than the weeks required to train a tank crewman. That was the point. The Universal Carrier was never built to fight tanks. It was built to carry infantry weapons and infantry men through ground that no truck could cross, across muddy fields, through shell craters, behind enemy artillery fire. It was an infantry support vehicle, designed for the open ground of European battlefields. It was not designed for amphibious assault. It was not designed for beach landings. It was not designed for Dieppe. Production became staggering. By the end of its run in 1960, factories in Britain, Canada, the United States, Australia and New Zealand would build approximately 113,000 Universal Carriers, more than the American Sherman, more than the Soviet T-34, more than the German Panzer IV, combined. Each British infantry battalion eventually fielded 33 carriers in its carrier platoon. They served in every theatre of the war: North Africa, Italy, Northwest Europe, Burma. But in August 1942, the British Army did not yet know how to land such vehicles on a defended beach. The strategic situation was desperate. Stalin demanded a second front to relieve pressure on the Eastern Front. Churchill, lacking the strength for full invasion, settled on raids. Vice Admiral Lord Louis Mountbatten, Chief of Combined Operations, oversaw the planning of what became Operation Jubilee. The plan was to seize the French port of Dieppe for one tide, to land 6,000 troops, mostly Canadian, plus British Commandos and 50 United States Army Rangers in their first ground combat in Europe, to capture intelligence, to test German coastal defences, to prove that a major port could be taken from the sea. The plan would require carriers to come ashore alongside the assault infantry and the Churchill tanks of the Calgary Regiment. The plan did not account for what the beach itself would do to them. Now, before we get into what actually happened on those beaches, and why a single Universal Carrier was photographed bogged in the shingle, while an entire raiding force was destroyed around it. If you're enjoying this deep dive into British military engineering and the men who fought with it, hit subscribe. It costs nothing and helps the channel grow. 0450 hours, August 19, 1942. The main assault hits the beach in front of Dieppe town. The plan called for the Royal Hamilton Light Infantry under Lieutenant Colonel Robert Lovat to land on White Beach, the Essex Scottish under Lieutenant Colonel Fred Jasperson to land on Red Beach, Churchill tanks of the Calgary Regiment to land immediately behind the infantry to break through the seawall. Universal carriers were embarked alongside the tanks, carrying ammunition, water, and medical supplies. The first thing that went wrong was the beach itself. The shingle at Dieppe is not sand. It is chert, rounded flint pebbles between 25 and 154 millimeters in diameter. The pebbles wedge into drive sprockets and snap track pins on contact. The Calgary Regiment landed 29 Churchill tanks. 27 reached the shore. About 15 crossed the seawall. Not one of them returned. None were penetrated by German anti-tank fire while still manned. The 7-centimeter Churchill armour held. What killed them was the chert. The Universal carriers fared no better. The single confirmed example to land that day, War Department Census number T13145, rolled off its landing craft, crossed 3 meters of shingle and bogged. Its crew, by all available accounts, abandoned it without firing a shot. It was photographed extensively by the Germans, sitting alongside the wrecked Churchills named Buttercup, Bloody and Brenda, just east of the casino. According to photographic research, T13145 may have belonged to either the Royal Hamilton Light Infantry or the Royal Regiment of Canada under Major Brian McCool. The unit attribution remains genuinely disputed. What was not disputed was the carnage on the beaches. At Blue Beach, Puys, 2 miles east of Dieppe, the Royal Regiment of Canada under Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Catto landed late, in daylight, against a seawall covered by 50 Germans in concrete bunkers. Of 554 men who landed, 227 were killed. Only 32 returned to England unwounded. The casualty rate was 94%. The official Canadian Army historian called Puys the abattoir. At Green Beach, Pourville, the South Saskatchewan Regiment under Lieutenant Colonel Charles Cecil Merritt landed on the wrong side of the River Sy. To advance, his men had to cross a single bridge in Pourville, which was raked by German machine gun fire. Merritt walked back and forth across that bridge waving his helmet, calling to his men to come on over, that there was nothing to worry about. He was wounded twice. He won the Victoria Cross. He was captured later that day after covering the withdrawal of his men. At Orange Beach, Varengeville, Lieutenant Colonel Simon Fraser, the 15th Lord Lovat, led No. 4 Commando in a flawless pincer attack against the 150mm Hesse coastal battery. They destroyed every gun. Captain Patrick Porteous, shot through the hand and the thigh, led the final bayonet charge. He won the Victoria Cross. It was the only complete success of the entire raid. By 0700 hours, the situation on the main beach was beyond recovery. Major General John Hamilton Roberts, commanding from the destroyer Calpe offshore, could not see through the smoke. He committed his floating reserve, the Fusiliers Mont Royal under Lieutenant Colonel Dollard Menard, into the killing ground. They were cut to pieces. Of 584 men who went in, 125 came out. Menard himself was wounded 5 times. By 1100 hours, withdrawal had begun. By 1400 hours, it was over. The Toronto Scottish Regiment, the machine gun battalion of the 2nd Canadian Division, the unit most popularly associated with carriers at Dieppe, had landed only 125 men in dismounted Vickers gun detachments distributed across the rifle battalions. They suffered the lowest casualty rate of any Canadian unit at Dieppe, 1 killed and 12 wounded or captured. The reason was simple. They had not landed in carriers. When the smoke cleared, the carriers that had been embarked for Dieppe were either at the bottom of the channel inside sunken landing craft, sitting on the decks of vessels that had returned to England without disembarking, or photographed in German propaganda alongside the wrecked Churchills. Total documented combat by Universal carriers at Dieppe. 0 rounds fired, 0 engagements. 1 vehicle confirmed ashore. 0 recovered. Allied casualties for the day: 3,623 men of 6,086 committed, 907 Canadians killed, 1,946 taken prisoner, only 2,210 returned to England. The Royal Air Force lost 106 aircraft, the worst single-day air loss of the war. German casualties: 591. On paper, the Universal carrier looked outclassed by every comparable vehicle of the Second World War. The German SDKFZ 251 half-track carried 12 men under thicker armour. The American M3 half-track carried 13 and mounted heavier weapons. The Soviet T-20 Komsomolets towed 45mm anti-tank guns. The Universal carrier carried 3 or 4 men under armour that a rifle round could pierce. In practice, none of those rivals came close to its production scale. Approximately 15,000 SDKFZ 251 half-tracks were built, around 53,000 M3 half-tracks. The Universal Carrier reached 113,000. It was small, cheap, simple, and could be built by any factory that could turn out a tractor. That was its true purpose. And Dieppe taught the Allies what its true purpose was not. The lessons of August 1942, paid for in Canadian blood, rebuilt Allied amphibious doctrine. The frontal assault on a defended port was abandoned. The Mulberry prefabricated harbours were developed instead. Massive preliminary naval and air bombardment became standard procedure. The fractured Combined Operations Command structure was replaced. And on March 11, 1943, Major General Sir Percy Hobart took command of the 79th Armoured Division. His brief was to develop the specialised armour that Dieppe had proven essential, the swimming Sherman tanks, the Churchill AVRE, with its petard mortar, the Sherman crab flail, the Churchill crocodile flamethrower, the bobbin carpet layer that would have saved the carriers and tanks at Dieppe by laying matting across the chert. They became known as Hobart's Funnies. American General Omar Bradley accepted only the swimming tanks for the United States beaches at Normandy. The disproportionate casualties on Omaha Beach are widely linked to that decision. The Universal Carrier itself went on to its real war. It served with the 8th Army across North Africa. It fought from Salerno to Cassino in Italy. It rolled with every British infantry battalion across France, Belgium and into Germany. Sergeant Parkash Singh of the 5th Battalion, 8th Punjab Regiment won a Victoria Cross at Donbike in Burma on January 6, 1943, rescuing trapped carrier crews under heavy fire. The Wasp flamethrower variant became one of the war's most feared bunker-clearing weapons. The Soviets received 2,560 under Lend-Lease. After 1945, carrier served Britain into the 1950s, New Zealand to 1958, Switzerland into the early 1960s, Pakistan in the Kashmir War of 1947 and 48, and Israel in the War of Independence in 1948. None of the Dieppe wrecks survive. The Germans scrapped them all. Several hundred Universal Carriers survive in museums around the world today. August 19, 1942. The church shingle beach in front of the casino at Dieppe, a single Universal Carrier, designation T13145, bogged in flint pebbles, abandoned by its crew. Surrounded by the bodies of the men it had been sent to support. It had 7 millimeters of armour. It had no turret. It had no gun heavier than a Bren. It bogged within 3 meters of its landing craft. It never fired a shot. Its crew survived only because they ran, and yet it worked. Not on that beach. Not on that day, but across every other beach the Allies would land on for the next 3 years. In the deserts of North Africa, in the mountains of Italy, in the bocage of Normandy, in the jungles of Burma, in every infantry battalion of the British Empire, 113,000 times over. The carrier did not fail at Dieppe. It taught the Allies how to land properly on June 6, 1944. That is not luck. That is the price of operational learning, paid in Canadian blood and British steel. It was small, it was simple, it was British, and it became the most produced armoured fighting vehicle in history, because the lessons of one bogged machine on one bloody beach taught an entire empire how to win.